Okay, we are getting into some more advanced algebra topics today. So we are doing combined equations, where we're combining both addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. And we're really focusing on knowing when to divide and multiply today. Okay, so our number one goal in all algebra is we want to get the variable by itself. And in order to get the variable by itself, we have to do addition and subtraction first to remove anything that we might be adding or subtracting to that's on the same side as the variable. The second thing that we have to do is remove the multiplication and division that's with the variable on that same side. So for example, in our first problem here, I want to get my variable x by itself, but I currently have this times 2 and plus 12 with it that I need to get rid of. So according to my rules, I am going to get rid of my addition or subtraction first. So this plus 12 is what has to go first. The opposite of plus 12 is minus 12. Now this is exactly like what we did in normal algebra in our basic algebra studies last chapter. Now we're just putting it all together. So the opposite of plus 12 is minus 12. It cancels out on that side. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay, so this guy is a plus 6 here, and this is a minus 12. They are different signs, so it means we have to subtract them. 12 minus 6 is 6. Our bigger number was 12, and in front of the 12 was a negative sign, so this is a negative 6. Now all that's left on this side is my 2 times x. So now I have 2x is equal to negative 6. Okay? So that my opposite of 2 times x is divided by. So I'm going to divide by 2 on one side. That cancels out so that all I'm left with is x on that side. If I did it on one side, I have to do it on the other. So now I get negative 6 divided by 2 equals negative 3. You could also backtrack and just think about it in the context of 2 times what equals negative 6. And you would say 2 times 3 gets me positive 6, so if it's negative, then I need to have a negative sign. So 2 times negative 3 gets me negative 6. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, so we have 13x plus 7 equals negative 32. Okay, so we need to get rid of our addition and subtraction first. We need to get rid of this plus 7. The opposite of plus 7 is minus 7. So now I have negative 32 minus 7. That's like saying negative 32 and negative 7. They're both the same signs, so it means we're going to add those two numbers up. 32 plus 7 is 39. And our answer is negative. Remember, we're adding and subtracting. When we're adding and subtracting, we do not cancel two negatives. If they're both negative, we keep the negative. If they're different signs, then you look at which number was bigger and keep the sign of that bigger number. So we have negative 39 on that side, but we still haven't dealt with our 13 times x. So now we have 13 times x equals negative 39. You can think about this in your head. 13 times what gets me negative 39? If you can't do it in your head, you're going to say, what's the opposite of 13 times x? It would be divided by x, or divided by 13. I'm going to divide by 13 on one side, and I have to do it on the other. So x is going to equal negative 39 divided by 13 is a negative 3. 39 divided by 13 is 3. There was only one negative, so our answer has to stay negative. Okay. Let's try something a little different. Okay. What we're working on with this problem is something called the distributive property. And this is super important as we go along in our studies. So what the distributive property is that you have some number outside of a parentheses, and inside that parentheses, you notice there's an x along with some other number. So it has two things inside the parentheses. One of them is a variable. And the hard part is that we need that variable by itself, but right now it's hooked up with that plus 10. So we're going to distribute our 5 and break apart our parentheses. So when I'm distributing, I'm taking this number and I'm multiplying it by each thing. Okay, so I'm going to take 5 times x, which is 5x, and positive 5 times a positive 10 is plus 50. And I still have my equals negative 5 over here. Now it looks exactly like what we have been doing. So I need to get x by itself, and I need to get rid of this plus 50 first. So the opposite of plus 50 is minus 50. If I did it to one side, I have to do it to the other. These guys have the same sign. That means we're going to add them up and keep the negative. So we have 55 and it's negative. So we still have this guy over here. We have 5x now equals negative 55. You could say 5 times what is going to get me negative 55. If you can't think of that in your head, you're going to say, what is the opposite of 5 times x? The opposite would be dividing. And so you would get x is equal to negative 11. Okay, let's try this next one. Okay, here's another distributive property. This time we have a negative number on the outside of our parentheses. So we're going to have to distribute negative 8 times r, gets us negative r. Now we're going to take negative 8 times negative 2. Notice I'm looping in whatever sign is in front of 2, I'm keeping that with the 2. So if this was a plus 2, I would say negative 8 times positive 2. But notice it's a minus sign, so we're going to say negative 8 times a negative 2, which gets me a plus 16 because we're multiplying, and those two negatives cancel each other out and make a positive. So now we have negative 8r plus 16 equals 40. Now it looks like everything else we've been doing. We need to get rid of this plus 16 first. I'm going to do the opposite of that, which is minus 16. Do it on both sides, just like we've always done. And it gets us 24, positive 24. We have negative 8 times r equals positive 24. So negative 8 times what gets us a positive 24? If you can't think of that in your head, you're going to divide by negative 8 on each side. And you get r is equal to negative 3. Okay. Now I'm going to work in some division. So this is saying x divided by 3 minus 8 gets us a negative 12. Okay, no distributive property here. We just have division and subtraction. We need to get rid of the subtraction first. So we're going to say what's the opposite of minus 8? That is plus 8. We're going to add 8 on each side. Okay. So then we have negative 12 and a positive 8. They're opposite signs, meaning we're going to subtract. 12 minus 8 is 4. Our bigger number was 12, and in front of the 12 was a negative sign, so you have negative 4. So x divided by 3 equals negative 4. You could ask yourself, what divided by 3 gets me a negative 4? If you can't think of that in your head, you're going to do the opposite of x divided by 3, and the opposite would be multiplying by 3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 on both sides. And then I get x all by itself here, which is what we want, and then negative 4 times a positive 3 gets us a negative 12 as our answer. And remember, you can always go plug your answer back in for x and solve and see if it works out. If what you get on one side doesn't match the other, then you know something went wrong. Okay, here's another example. So we have plus 5 here. We need to get rid of that guy first. The opposite of plus 5 is minus 5. Minus 5 on each side. These are the same signs, so we're going to add it together and keep our negative. Now we have this guy. Don't forget about him. I'm going to put him up with our x so I don't forget about him. And I'm going to say negative x divided by 2 equals negative 14. Okay. On this one, you're going to say, what is the opposite of negative x divided by 2? And that would be multiplying by 2. I multiply by 2 on each side, and I still have my whole negative x still here. Negative x equals negative 14 times 2 is negative 28. Notice that we have a minus sign, a negative sign on each side of our equal sign, so they cancel, and we just get x is equal to positive 28 as our final answer. Okay, last one that we're going to work on. So we have m divided by 3 minus 7 equals a negative 10. We need to get rid of our minus sign first here, our minus 7. The opposite of minus 7 is plus 7. We're going to do that on both sides. Notice these guys are different signs, meaning that we're going to subtract. 10 minus 7 is 3. 10 was our bigger number, and it had a negative sign in front of it, so we have a negative 3. But we still have m divided by 3 equals negative 3. So you're going to think in your head, what divided by 3 equals negative 3? If you can't do that, you're going to take the opposite. What is the opposite of m divided by 3? Well, it's timesing by 3, multiplying by 3 on each side. Those guys cancel out, so all I'm left with is m. Take negative 3 times a positive 3 on this side, and that gets me negative 9 is my final answer. Okay, now this is difficult, but we're going to practice it multiple times. So there's a worksheet for you to do today, and I will say, if you paid close attention to the notes, you will be rewarded on the worksheet today. They look very similar and familiar. Some of them do. So get started on that. There's only 10 questions to be done.